Hey there, this is Alex Soth in my studio in St. Paul, Minnesota. Behind me here is my new bookshelf display system, which I had made because I like looking at books and not just their spines. And it gives me a chance to spend time with new books. And in fact, all of the ones behind me here are books published in 2022. And I have them pulled out because it's that time of the year again. It's the time of the year where a lot of people are asked to produce their list of favorite photo books. And this is something that I've done for a long time that I also feel very ambivalent about because I hate excluding things and and there's a whole sort of ego component to this. I feel like when you make a list, a playlist, or a list of favorite things, um, it's like there's this projection of your own ego, and you're trying to tell people you're cool or whatnot. Um, and then there's also this other ego element if you are a photographer of like, oh, why did they make it and they didn't make it and yada yada. I think too much about this, but that's a bit of my nature, I guess. Anyway, it is this ambivalent process, but it has this huge upside because it forces me to look at things closely and really analyze them. And it's sort of like, when you're in school and you're given an assignment and suddenly you look at something in a much deeper way. And it's actually a big part of why I make these videos is that it forces me to analyze my own thoughts about things. The thing about these year-end lists is that they're not like critics lists. They're individuals responding to their favorite things, what they actually like. And so I've tried to keep that in mind every time I make a list. Like, I'm not making this to say this is the best thing in the world. I'm making it to say, oh, this is what I like this year. This is what I took pleasure in. I learned something from, etc. So with that said, I'm going to pull these from the shelf and take them into my library and look at them a little more closely. Okay, so one little note about the order here. It's reverse alphabetical. I don't want to give the idea that there's a lead up to the best book of the year or anything like that. And then as an end of the alphabetter myself, I kind of like going that way. Can you see how neurotic this process makes me? But there's something good about that. Again, there's like this way of teasing out your own opinions can be revealing. Anyway, the first book I want to talk about is After Children by Osamu Yakunami. And Yakunami is a photographer I know next to nothing about. I went to his website. He appears to be a commercial photographer or makes a living that way, and then also does personal projects. He's published a couple of books with Library Man, a great publisher. And then the publisher of this particular book is something called Milk Japan Publishing Company. Not familiar with it. Anyway, let me dive. Whoop. There we go. Let me dive into this book. So this is Yakunami's best known body of work, not this particular book, but these portraits of children around this age that he made between 2010 and 2013, something like that. And he made 1,000 portraits like this. I'm just going to quickly, flip to the middle of the book here just to give you a sense of what's going on here. It's always these straight ahead portraits. Actually, there's a better example back here. You fold this out and you can see the repetitive typological nature of these pictures. Then what he did, so he did 1,000 of these portraits, And then more recently, he's gone back to find the same children and rephotograph them. And so then you have this kind of before and after picture that you can do comparisons with. Now, you might have noticed that I've failed to mention a prominent part of the picture, which would be the fruit and vegetables on the shoulder. So what's going on there? I don't have a clue. I mean, I haven't found an interview where this is discussed. I'm not sure I want to find an interview where this is discussed. It's so peculiar. I've tried to imagine what I would think about these pictures if that wasn't there. And the honest truth is I'd be pretty bored, I think, just because, the sort of pure typology, the pure dead straight ahead portrait is just too repetitive after a while. And then the age thing is quite interesting. But visually, the repetition would be a lot. And so there's this piece of fruit. And it just utterly changes things. And I imagine it changes the quality of the portrait sitting. I mean, how could it not? But just visually, it just shakes everything up. And it's so bizarre. And I just barely can get my head around it. But it keeps me looking again and again. And I've never seen anything like this. I mean, it's so, it feels like a German book, very rigorous and repetitive. And then it feels like a surrealist book. It feels like, French surrealism or something. And then this mashing together of those two energies is utterly bizarre, but wonderful. And so you have that humorous visual delight, and then you're able to look at these before and after pictures and make comparisons and think about aging and all of that. So something else that is really interesting here is this one piece of text, and it's by Seiko Ito. I don't know who that is, so not the photographer, but it quotes the photographer, who says, "It is impossible to identify individuality through comparison. On the contrary, it is inevitable that the act of comparison itself creates similarities between A and B. Therefore, no comparison is the key to bringing out individuality." So what Yakonami is saying is that we shouldn't compare these pictures. That this child is a distinct human being at this age and a distinct human being at this age, and they're not the same. I think that's just really fascinating to have that in mind as you look at these pictures. That identity is this ever-shifting process. And, there's this thing about how our cells replace themselves in however many years, and and we're essentially utterly new beings. And I like thinking about that with that text in mind. So it's just such a strange book, and it does make me think about identity, and it makes me think about photography and what it does. And it's just totally fascinating. So the second book I want to share is Odessa by Yelena Yemchuk. And I have to confess that I wasn't familiar with Yemchuk previously either. which is just a gap in my knowledge, because she's published a number of books, and anyway, it was just new to me. So I learned that Yemchuk was born in Ukraine and lived there, I think, until the age 11 or so, and then emigrated with her parents to the U.S. And of course, always had this feeling for her homeland. And she was from Kyiv, but she always had this feeling about Odessa, having traveled there, and she thought of it as her dream city, and a place she always wanted to explore again. And so I think she went back around 2015 or so to photograph there. And this was just at the time when things were really heating up with Russia. And so one of the things that she did was photograph young people who were volunteering for the army. Now, this particular book was supposed to be published in 2020, but was delayed because of the pandemic. And it's probably a good thing in some ways, because it's coming out now. It takes on so much more meaning. And so let's take a look. So the book is published by Gost, which is English publisher, really good. It starts with these faces, young people, and we have this sense of youth. So it's a heavily vertical book, presumably 35 millimeter. What I particularly love is that, you have these classically composed images, and then she comes up really close and lost my focus there. Hello, come on, baby. There you go. Wow, it's struggling with the focus there. Okay, there we go. That's ironic because, of course, when you're making a portrait, you struggle with the focus. So these close-up images, and occasionally these sequential moments like this, which is quite striking. Some of the pictures go across the gutter, and I love it when it's these double portraits. So it's very much not a war book, but you have this slight feeling of it in the background, seeing the occasional military uniform. The texts are by the poet Ilya Kaminsky, and I have to say that they're just incredible. I think there's 4 or 5 of them in the book, scattered about, and they take it even further in this kind of dreamy direction. Wow, just a complete knockout. And this picture has really stayed with me after looking at the book. And one of the things that happens is that the yellow of these shirts and the yellow of the book kind of merge together in my mind. And so when I think about the book on my shelf, I have that yellow feeling. And I think this is an important part of bookmaking, is kind of getting into one's subconscious this feeling of texture or color or what have you. Interesting color play between certain pictures, and again this movement in close at times. Here again is that military reference, but it's very sort of happy-go-lucky, and there's not this feeling that it's going to devolve into what it is in 2022. Anyway, that is a quick glimpse at this book. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. As it happens, I read in the New York Times this morning that Odessa was just bombed, and the power's out for like 1.5 million people. And so that meaning is interjected into this work, but it's also work from an older period of time, a more optimistic period of time, and that juxtaposition is so powerful, and it's this absolutely fantastic book. So book number 3 here is Participation by Jordan Weitzman. It's a slim book. I think I counted 37 pictures in it, and it's utterly delightful. This cover illustration, which kind of brings to mind Matisse and the cover for A Decisive Moment. It has something else going on down here, which are these presumably initials of the participants, the people that Weitzman photographed. Let me get rid of myself. This is by Magic Hour Press, which is Weitzman's own publishing enterprise. He also has an absolutely fantastic podcast. So Participation is a book of pleasure. It's sensual. It's full of visual delight and compositional delight. And it's not heavy. It's not deeply serious. But man, that feels good also in a time like this. Again, these sensual qualities, the squeezing of orange juice, limbs all over, putting a finger in here, lots of feet. I think if you're a foot fetishist, this might be the book for you. The play of color. To me, this book feels like kind of like that orange juice, like fruit, like fresh fruit, and just utterly delightful to look at. Hair and bodies. I love this movement back and forth in front of a mirror. There's not much to say about these pictures. You just enjoy them, savor them. The book doesn't really have any text other than, I think, an acknowledgments page. It doesn't even have a text. Thanks, Jason Fulford, for helping with the sequence, which sort of makes some sense if you know Jason's work. Anyway, a book of pure delight. Okay, so the next book is My Husband by Tokuko Ushioda. And I have to confess that when this first arrived, I kind of did one of these moves and sort of didn't give it proper attention, basically. It was I was a little confused because it's actually 2 books, and there's a belly band which you have to remove carefully, and then you have these 2 books, and one's soft cover, one's hard cover, and they're all black and white pictures. These are square, these are 35 millimeter, and on first glance they seemed I don't know, sort of classical, yet informal black and white photos, and I didn't pay much attention, which I later felt totally differently about. So the book, again, is called My Husband, but one of the things you quickly realize is that there are a lot more pictures of empty interiors or peopleless interiors than there are pictures of the husband. And so there he is. And there's also a child. And so the child, whose name is Maho, is actually depicted far more than the husband, whose name is Shinzo Shiamo, who himself is a highly regarded photographer. These pictures were made, I think, in the very late 70s and early 80s. And I think that both photographers now are in their early 80s, and so this is this is a look back, and on first glance, I thought, oh, these are nice, sensitive, domestic pictures. They feel very real. It feels like real moments at home. There doesn't appear to be a lot of conflict in these images. Okay, so you get the idea. I did a count on these pictures. I forget what it was, but the husband is depicted, I think, 1/4 of the time, and again, the child more, and interiors even more than that. And then here you have these 35 millimeter images, which are doing something similar. For whatever reason, I found myself drawn to these photographs much more so. So that doesn't sound like a passionate statement about this work, but then I read the text in the back. So there are 2 essays in the back of the book. One's by Yuri Matsuda, who's an art critic, but it's the second essay by Yuri Nagashima, who's a photographer, that really changed the way I understood the work. And she writes here, my husband combines shots of Maho-san as a young child, rooms without people, and images of Shimo-san. Yoshioda-san and Shimo-san himself told me that at this point in time, Shimo-san would sometimes return home and sometimes not. When he left the house, there was no knowing when he would be back. So there's this little anecdote that he would be gone a lot. Also, he was a photographer and he traveled, whereas Yoshida was staying home. So this brings us to this part of her essay where she writes, it feels to me as if Yoshida-san's photographs capture the dilemma that I've been battling for a long time. The question of whether to prioritize my professional life as a photographer or my everyday life in which I play a supporting role to my family members. Yoshida-san's photographs of interiors, especially those hinting at Shimo-san's absence, seem to express the feelings of a photographer thinking of her absent husband. Living her life with a young child, where just getting through the quota of daily tasks uses up the entirety of her energy. Yoshida-san is suddenly visited by moments where nobody is around. These are quiet, slightly lonely, and yet intensely rich moments. The sense of loneliness and an accompanying sense of the joy found even in that loneliness. Even if you spend the vast majority of the day as a mother and a wife, those fleeting moments when you can photograph are opportunities to validate your own existence and bring a deep sense of relief. So with that in mind, looking back at these pictures of these interiors and thinking about this woman wandering around the house, and she's exploring the floor and the interior spaces and enjoying those moments, that gives a different feeling for the work and becomes emotionally richer for me. As I said, this book, which interestingly is the one that features the picture of her husband, and from what I understand,
more closely evokes his work, which was also in 35 millimeter, is just of less interest to me. But it's a fascinating pair of books. Highly recommend. Okay, next up is Some Say Ice by Alessandra Sanguinetti. And this is an interesting one to talk about because it brings up the issue of sort of personal bias, I guess. Alessandra is a member of Magnum, someone I've admired for a million years. I love her work. And so there's that piece to it. And then there's this other funny piece, which is that she's, from another place. She lives in San Francisco, but she's from Argentina. And she made this work in my place, And after so many years of me stomping around in other people's homelands, here was someone coming to where I live and making work. And so I had a weird kind of bias against it. Not against it. I just didn't want to deal with it, I guess. And then I looked at the work, and it just knocked my socks off. And also there was something about her statement, which is it's really the only text in the book, but I think it's worth noting. And she says, my connection to Wisconsin began as an imaginary one, sparked by Wisconsin Death Trip, a book by Michael Lisi that somehow landed in my lap when I was a child growing up in Buenos Aires. And so Wisconsin became this mythical place to her. And that just seemed so great. And I connected with that idea. And one of the reasons I think I haven't been able to make that kind of work here is because I live in the place, and one needs to be away from it in some ways to produce that. Anyway, the work was undeniable. It's so good. This is not part of the book, by the way. It's just my own little bookmark. It's every picture is a surprise and a delight. I'm going to get rid of myself here. So house, and then inside the house. And one of the things I love are these different kinds of lighting. So this soft light here, hard light on this one, and the eye is moving to different places. This gorgeous lighting here, so physical, visceral, and tactile. One of the things I often admire in a book is when I can turn the page and not know what picture is going to be next. And yet all of the work communicates a similar feeling. And it does have a mythical quality, but there are also, very much real people, and it looks like, documentary photography in many ways. So I'm not going to go through the whole book, but it's great work. Different kinds of pictures again. So this having a more staged quality. This almost looking like large format portraiture with the lack of depth of field. This almost looking like photojournalism. This, very formal again, very formal. So different kinds of pictures, but they work together seamlessly. This is so good. So subtle, so understated. Anyway, it's a fantastic book. What can I say? Amazing work, Alessandra. Okay, 2 more books. I'm going to present these together and very quickly because they're just, they're both, not just, they are both comprehensive survey monographs on great, somewhat underappreciated photographers. So Judith Joy Ross and Tom Sandberg. Both are published by Aperture. Both are beautifully printed. They appear to be almost exactly the same size, interestingly. And they fill a hole. So in this library behind me, I think I have like 4 Tom Sandberg books. They're I think all soft cover or thin, and they're good, but they don't have enough meat on the bone for me. And exactly the same with Judith Joy Ross. And so finally, a hardcover, lush book that gives you everything. One incredible thing about the Judith Joy Ross book is that because she works making these contact prints, and they have different colors depending on the chemistry that she's using, or depending on the paper and the exposure time and all of that. And so that very subtle color difference exists in the printing here. And I know it was incredibly difficult to achieve, but it is not random, and brings to mind the distinctive individuality of each image. The Sandberg book, like his work, is very minimal. There's very little text in this book, and the pictures are pretty consistently small. When I talked about earlier with Alessandra's book, every picture being different, Sandberg is a master of that. And every image is different, and yet it feels like Sandberg. You're in his universe. Even this photograph of John Cage, which is, I've always thought of it as a real outlier in his work. But you're in his particular dreamy, minimal universe. And it's a must-have book. It's been not well publicized, so highly recommend it. Okay, so the next book by Thomas Demand. Demand is so different than Judith Joy Ross and Tom Sandberg in so internationally recognized, so many comprehensive monographs on him, and is just a very different kind of photographer / artist. And so this book really surprised me. I have a bunch of his books, and I thought I knew what to expect, and then I got it, and it was doing something entirely different. And yet, it's a museum catalog. It was for an exhibition in Spain. So let me show it here. You see these die cuts and this bright paper stock, and you're dealing with paper, and then boom, this is a pop-up book. So this particular pop-up just does this. It presents a curve here. And just so you know what we're dealing with, so if you go to the very back of the book, you will see that same work in the installation view for the exhibition. So I am jealous of this book on multiple levels. I've always wanted to do a book for a show that includes installation views of the show. And that's what happened here. And then this is no joke. Well, it's kind of a joke, but I always had this idea for Shark Tank that I thought was the greatest idea of making pop-up books of installations of different, major museum shows that the museums could sell in their bookstores. I thought that was a great idea. But he beat me to the punch. So first of all, it's just fun and super cool. But it also works with Demand's work, which is so much about paper and folding. And then it even works in terms of giving you the feel for the exhibition. So you can look at the object like this, and let's see if I can do this for the camera. I don't know. It's really hard. Oh yeah, there it is. You can actually peek in a door. Man, I'm doing a terrible job of that. But you can actually look through windows and have the experience somewhat of what it's like to be in the show. So just super cool. I'm usually not such a fan of books as objects, but this is one. I mean, how great is that? Anyway, and then you have the actual installation, which incidentally is itself fascinating because it's these floating rooms. So super cool book. And for me, a real surprise for the list. Okay, next up, Hafiz by Sabiha Chamen. Sabiha is another Magnum photographer and newer on the scene. Just an unbelievable talent. Again, I have a personal bias, but wow, this book, like the Demand book, it's a tactile experience. I mean, this cover, and when I see this book on my shelf, I just think about touching it. It's such a pleasure to hold it in the hand. It's a book that's full of mystery, but is also documentary. So I think one important thing is that you need to kind of know what's going on looking at this work, and Sabiha makes this clear by just telling us what Hafiz is, and it's someone who memorizes the Quran, and then we learn that there are these schools in which people will spend years memorizing the Quran, not just memorizing, but reciting it. And there are these girls' schools. Now, in the back of the book, there's another essay, and this is a much more personal essay by Sabiha, and which she talks about her own experience going to one of these schools and then getting access to return. And she also talks about the fact that she has a twin and the nature of identity as a twin and also as a girl in one of these schools in which you sort of all are made to look alike. And yet she talks about the kind of creativity and expression of individuality that she would find with these women. And so it's that feeling of a secret of something happening behind the scenes and getting access to it. So here we see the Quran and the cover, which is similar here. Presumably, this cover does not have these playful girls on it. And again, this feeling of secrets, of opening something up, getting access to another world. I mean, there is something related to, some say, ice, in that there's this feeling of sort of magic realism and something private and quiet and a little bit dreamlike. And those are all kind of adjectives that describe my favorite kind of work, which is why this work is on my list. And one thing that hopefully people will think about looking at this video is what their own list would be. If you could choose 3 books from the last 10 years, what would they be? So I'm not going to show all the book, but there's just one spread that I want to share. I just think it's so fantastic. So you see these 2 excellent portraits, this girl on rollerblades, and then you open it up, and it's this fantastic sequence. So you see a woman with a blue headscarf looking out the wall. So presumably this is the wall of the school. Then you see a pink suitcase. She's looking out. There's a man on the outside. And then she's out with her pink suitcase. Is this a student who's learned the Hafiz and is now going back out into the world? I don't know, but it gives this kind of narrative quality to the work. And so there are all these different experiences to be had in this book. It's dense. I should also say that this essay is breathtakingly good. Sabiha is pretty new to photography. She's self-taught, and she's so damn good. And then her writing is also incredible. So huge talent. The book is by Red Hook Editions. All right, so the final book is Pickpocket by Daniel Arnold. It came out in late 2021, but I didn't get it till this year. It's really hard to find, quite expensive, sadly. And it's bizarre because Arnold is such a popular photographer, just huge on Instagram and everywhere else. And this is his first and only book, and it appears to be, incredibly limited and sort of a collector's item. And hopefully there's going to be a large run book of his soon. I mean, someone's got to do it. That said, this thing, it just has the aura of cool to it. It is so cool, and so well designed, and so fun, and energetic. So that's the thing, is that Arnold's a street photographer, and his work is about that kind of energy of people and the crush on the street. And this book has that energy, and is also just fresh in terms of a piece of design. So let me just give you a glimpse of it. First of all, we have these kind of chapter headings over here, which look like sponsorships. They look like ads. And there's something about this where it feels like a mixture between something that was produced for a company, but it's not. It just has a bit of that vibe about it. So if you know his pictures, they're just like so funny and surprising. Look at this picture, killer. They have a quality that's so much in the language of street photography, and yet they feel like Daniel Arnold pictures, one of the all-time classics. So the book, very clean presentation, nothing too fancy. And then we get to this section, which is, it's like a little magazine within it. And so then you have the life inside these wealthy parties, celebrities, all of that, which is a part of his life and making a living, and this kind of stuff. So it becomes its own little magazine inside of here. And then you go back out onto the street. And I'm just going to move quickly here. So then the next section, sellout of these cell phone pictures. Often you have subway photographs, things like that. Back out on the street again. Next up are fuck ups. So just like messed up pictures. Also on a different stock of paper. And then we have this section, which are pictures in the Diamond District. And here then we have a little piece of writing by the filmmakers Josh and Benny Safdie. And we learn how these pictures came to be, that they were going to make their movie Uncut Gems and wanted pictures from that area. And it's just impossible to photograph there. And talking about, Bruce Gilden being unable to photograph there. And here Daniel Arnold just comes in, swoops in and does it. This interlude of pictures made outside of New York, which is fun. And then boom, boom, boom. Then we have notes to the photographs back here, which are voluminous, many, many notes. And then finally, Josh Safdie has this piece of writing, which is really funny. He says, we called him Young Winogrand, 40 Deuce Gilden, Fly in the Wall Arbus, Robbing Frank, Hell on Levitt. It's funny, alive, just like their work as filmmakers. And I mean, you don't get any cooler than this. So there you have it. 10 books. Wow. That was a lot of work doing that, more than I expected. And I have to say, I spent so many hours choosing that selection. Again, ridiculous, but it's a great learning experience. I hope you make your own list, choose 10 books from the last 10 years and make a list of your favorites, not the best ones, your favorites. And you'll end up learning a lot about yourself. So if you made it this far, thanks for watching, and I will see you down the road.